According to German ambassador to India, Walter J. Lindner, the German government has not exerted any pressure on India or any other country to take sides in the present Russian-Ukrainian war. Every country has the freedom to establish its own viewpoint, he said. Since Russia's February 24 invasion of Ukraine, India has abstained 5 times. While none of these abstentions altered the vote's outcome, they were motivated by India's desire to ensure its supply of defense weapons. The Indian Air Force, for example, operates fighter jets such as the MiG-21, Su-30 MKI, MiG-29, as well as Mi-17 helicopters, Kamov, Kar-31 helicopters, Il-76, and Antonov 32 transport aircraft. The INS Vikramaditya aircraft carrier was originally the Russian Admiral Gorshkov, and it operates MiG-29K fighters, as well as the recently acquired S-400 air defense system. Russia has leased a nuclear submarine to India, and also assisting India in the development of its own nuclear submarines. There are now 4 Russian warships on order, 2 of which will be built in the Indian coastal state of Goa, and New Delhi also intends to buy the Igla air defense system and 200 utility helicopters. While India's neutrality gives crucial comfort to an increasingly isolated Russia, India's abstentions are causing issues in other quarters and have elicited great discontent, according to one member of the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations during a hearing last week. Indian uniqueness in foreign policy is not a new phenomenon. It predates the country's independence. When the Korean War began in 1950, the Communist Soviet Union, China, and its allies were already engaged in a Cold War with capitalist nations. By refusing to join either side in the Korean War, India performed an innovative and helpful role. Given the disclosure of nuclear weapons and their tremendously deadly potential, it felt to Indian decision-makers that India had to play a positive role in the Korean War. India dispatched a medical team, the 60th Parafield Ambulance, to aid people injured in the fight. It assisted 200,000 injured people and performed 2,300 field operations. Later, after the combat ceased in 1953, India dispatched 6,000 soldiers to create the Custodian Force India, which was entrusted with caring for prisoners of war and addressing the question of their repatriation. On a political and diplomatic level, India played a crucial role in attempting to end the conflict. The Indian government backed UN Security Council resolutions aimed at restoring the status quo, without demonizing any party or adopting actions that might prolong or escalate the war. The United States desires that India, along with Israel, Pakistan, and North Korea, sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty (NPT). The NPT has been rejected by India as discriminatory, because it allows the permanent members of the UN Security Council, that is, the United States, Russia, China, the United Kingdom, and France, to have nuclear arsenals without any obligation to disarm, whereas India, despite being a nuclear weapons state, is required to sign the treaty as a non-nuclear weapons state, and subject itself to inspections. India also believes that the NPT has failed to institutionalize nuclear non-proliferation and a verifiable reduction in global nuclear arsenals. On March 20, 2003, then U.S. President George W. Bush declared America's clearly unlawful invasion, based on a falsehood that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, which was supported by British, Polish, and Australian forces, a decision they would all come to regret. Winning the peace proved more difficult for the U.S. than fighting the war. As U.S. fatalities rose following the fall of Baghdad, the United States requested India to join the coalition military. The Indian Parliament condemned the invasion and demanded a prompt withdrawal of occupation forces, with the UN playing a key role. In retrospect, India's stance seems to be justifiable. Indian soldiers were pressed to join the coalition of the willing. Fortunately, India had Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, a gentleman, who turned down America's request for 20,000 Indian troops on the ground after the occupation of Iraq began. New Delhi was well aware that the invasion and occupation were clearly unlawful, with potentially disastrous consequences for West Asia. In the case of Afghanistan, the same situation was repeated throughout the Barack Obama administration, and much more aggressively during the Donald Trump administration. According to US President Donald Trump, India, along with other neighbors, should be waging the war in Afghanistan instead. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is illegal. It is a violation of the United Nations Charter and an act of aggression under international law. It also violates Russia's assurances to Ukraine as part of the Budapest Memorandum in 1994, when it agreed to respect the country's sovereignty and borders in exchange for Kiev giving up its nuclear weapons. However, the US, China, Israel, the Soviet Union, and NATO have all used aggression on various times. NATO launched a 3-month bombing operation against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia on March 23, 1999, ostensibly to prevent the dictatorial administration of Slobodan Milosevic from ethnically cleansing Kosovo Albanians in Serbia's semi-autonomous province. The decision to begin a humanitarian intervention, in which one did not require UN approval to strike a nation or fulfill any of the previously existing legal conditions such as self-defense or preemption, as well as the manner in which the campaign was carried out, has been strongly questioned. The concept of distinction, which requires military commanders to distinguish between military objectives and civilian individuals or things, is one of the core principles of international humanitarian law. The practical implementation of this concept is essentially captured in Article 57 of the Additional Protocol, which requires those who plan or decide on an assault to do everything practicable to ensure that the targets to be attacked are neither people nor civilian objects. NATO's use of force was neither approved by the Security Council or justified by self-defense. Hence, the use of force was illegal, and any violent actions taken by NATO were also illegal, demonstrating that it was not a purely defensive alliance. Back in 1994, only 5 years ago, the Rwandan genocide occurred, with little action or remorse from the world community. Even once the enormity of the genocide became clear, no country took action, not because of a stalemate at the UN Security Council or a veto, but because Rwanda was just not high enough on the priority list, being strategically and economically insignificant to global supply lines. China and India, the world's 2 most populous countries, have also declined to join the United States in criticizing and penalizing Russia. The US has emphasized bringing India into the fold. However, India has also entered into a growing strategic cooperation with Russia. India voted against condemning Russia in both the United Nations Security Council and the General Assembly. In addition, India has declined to join the sanctions on Russia. The refusal of India to obey orders and join the US-led unipolar world has enraged the US, which has demanded that India take a clear position. However, the demand has been met with inflammatory threats.